Hi, this is Dr. Brenda with EPIC, the Embassy Independent and Internet Churches Network. This is our first virtual pastors and leaders summit that we're conducting now in May of 17th, 2023, while we're doing this live. But we know that many pastors and leaders are going to be watching this because I'm going to make sure of it after the fact. We're going to be pushing this and riding this like a pony to get this message out. I'm so happy to have our special guest back with us, not just a guest. He is a partner of our ministry. He is a supporter. And I look at everything I've probably seen more of his videos than he has. Welcome to Epic, Phil Cooke. Phil, glad to have you back so much. It's a blessing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brenda. I love being with you. Every time we get together, fun things happen. So I'm excited about today's program.
Yeah, and Phil is I'll go back and do that intro with Cooke Media has been sound in media and ministry. And I was looking over your information and my information as well. And I was thinking, even as we're dealing with pastors, and I'm saying one of the things that came to me is when you're doing media ministry, you need someone that's ministry minded, not just professional. And that's what I think. That's what I love so much about Cooke Media. You're a professional, but you're ministry. So throwing that in as well, pastors, as you're doing stuff, don't just look for media professionals, look for media ministry professionals. Did I say that right?
Perfect. That's great. Exactly right. Absolutely. I love it. I think that's why I got a PhD in theology. I thought, even though I've been producing media in 70 countries around the world, I really wanted to speak the language of ministry. And so I think it's so important. My dad was a pastor, and I really do believe we want to be professional, but at the same time, we want to have a heart for ministry if we're going to be effective.
And speak the language, words that I've coined, and I'm using them as well as not just speaking the language, but creating a culture and creating the community. And that's what we're trying to do, especially because, as people know, we are Church of God in Christ, but we know that since COVID, there is a lot of things that are happening, and we're going to do we're going to hear some more from you later. But one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, Phil, is since what I'm seeing, I've tried to find information, I haven't, but I'm seeing a rise that the pre-COVID leaders are now post-COVID pastors. But what's happening with many of them, they're getting information offline. They're getting a little Twitter, a little Feedbook, a little Facebook, a little LinkedIn, a little that. They put this together. It's like soup. It's like ministry soup. They a little this, a little that. They put it in like stone soup, and just start stirring it up. And they have no identity, no word, no structure. And so one of the things that we wanted to pull from you, from your professional insight, I couldn't find anything. I'm looking to see what God is speaking of. What have you seen out there that since, especially in the African American community, many people have not gone back to church, and they're starting churches online, but they don't have a structure. There's something missing. Have you seen that? Or what do you think about that?
Absolutely. And I think you're exactly right. That's why we need organizations like Cooke, church networks like Cooke, denominations, because they need that structure and they need some sense of purpose and support. I think a big part of it is support. It's interesting that what's happened since COVID is so many churches are coming back. I talk to pastors all the time who say, yes, people are coming back, but I don't recognize anybody. I think during the pandemic, people were watching a lot of different live streams and they thought, well, I like this church better than this church. I'm going to go over here. And so a lot of people are switching churches. And we're also seeing that, particularly in the African American community, a lot of people aren't coming back. I think I'm seeing the biggest struggles generally in African American churches with trying to get people back. So here's a couple thoughts about that. I think it's so important to understand that stop worrying about the way it used to be. You may have a church, you may be getting 100 people back now. You may have had 400 people or 300 people back before the pandemic. Stop thinking, we used to have 400. Start thinking we have 150, and we're going to build on that. That is your new baseline. It's your new number. Let's start building on that. The other thing is, absolutely, this is not the time to stop doing your online streaming, your online social media.
Yes.
Absolutely not. And for me, it's not a, you'll love this, Dr. Brenda. For me, it's not an either or thing, it's a both and thing. I want
Hmm.
people, no matter how they choose to engage with my church, I want it to be an amazing experience. I can't change people's mind. I can't change people's hearts. Some people got used to going to church in their pajamas. Okay, I get that. I don't like it. I like people being in the building.
That's
However,
right.
let's not stop ministering to those people. And hopefully, that online, that live stream can be so compelling, they'll sit out there and think, wow, I got to get back there. I got to get back to that place. So, absolutely, I'm hearing too many pastors say, now that we're getting people back, let's stop. Let's stop the live streaming business. This is not the time to do that. I think it's going to be with us forever. And here's the other thing to think about. I can tell you this, virtually 100% of new visitors today will check you out online before they decide to visit.
Exactly.
So if you're not online, if you don't have a great website, a great live stream, a good social media presence, they're going to go somewhere else.
That's
So
right.
I think, in a world where people want to check you out online first, let's make that online experience amazing. So that's the encouragement I would give to pastors and leaders in churches today. And going back to your original point, I think the fact that people like you in a structured denomination like Kojic are so critical, because we're providing ideas and resources and information to these pastors. And I just, it's so much better than pastors out there trying to figure it out on their own. And so
Hmm.
I'm really excited about what you guys are doing.
I love what you're saying, and this is what we're personally doing at the embassy, Church of God in Christ for our church. We have, we're in a rural community, Putnam County, Florida, only 70,000 people. I think that's like the parking lot or the highway in LA. That's
True.
that's
Yeah.
that's y'all traffic. That's our whole
Yes.
county. There's the traffic. You know, and one of the things is that we are able to reach more people. Our online presence, because we're media people, so media was first, and bulk of our heart. So we had one person say that when we were doing this at the beginning of Kojic, she's actually the one of the administrative assistants to in the International Women's Department, Mother Harazine Hedgebeth Keys. She said one thing about Dr. Will and Brenda: this isn't their new normal. This is their normal. And she said we could have been so much farther along if we would have listened to a lot of the things when we were trying to bring a lot of things. People just didn't want to hear it. They couldn't see it.
Yeah.
I had one pastor tell me, listen, if I go online, they're not going to come to the church. So, well, we need to give them something to come to church for. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm not
Yes.
even going to stress myself. I'm,
Yeah.
I'm not. And
Yes.
so, but I think many people are trying to choose. And actually, it was Bishop Robinson last week when we were speaking. He said, listen, before COVID, and we had 60 people coming to church on Wednesday night. He said, I'm
Wow.
over 400 now in my Wednesday night Bible study and growing and loving it. And
That's
he's talking to
fantastic.
pastors that are not wanting to be online, and they're not, we're trying to build, they're trying to, let's go there, about trying to rebuild your church without your media present. Is that going to work?
Well, it's not going to work today. It's going to be very, very difficult. Now, having said that, let me say that the old ways, the before digital ways are still important. We still
Yes.
need to be out there meeting people. I work with a lot of church planters, and I say, you got to go to Starbucks, you got to go to the local grocery store, you got to
Yes.
just start conversations with people and meet people. And those old, what we call analog ways, are still important. Getting out there and just meeting and greeting and face-to-face conversations, that's still important. However, in the world we live in today, people live on social media.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it's so incredibly important that, and let me just say this, stop. If you're using social media, it's not just about promoting your church. It's not just about putting a piece of your sermon out there or putting a quote or something out
Yes.
there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do ministry on social
Exactly.
media. Pray for people on Instagram. Pray for people on Facebook. One of the things, now this is interesting. Dr. Brenda. One of the things I'm seeing is during COVID, pastors realize, we've been doing church the same way for 200 years. I mean, pretty much the same way, the same order of service, the same, in going to the building, all these things. And a lot of pastors are thinking maybe as we come out of COVID, we shake things up a little bit and start doing things a little differently. Mm-hmm. So I have one pastor that I work with in Alabama that he's still doing live streaming only 3 weekends a month. And on that fourth month, or that fourth weekend, he does a worship concert on Friday night. He takes the congregation into the streets because they love homeless. They want to minister to homeless people. And then on Sunday, they have a blowout worship service at their church. They take over the entire weekend on that fourth weekend every month. But the other three Sundays, they're still live streaming. So another church I know is following the Catholic model that has, Catholics have small daily masses every day at their church, just a small, short, intimate time. And a lot of guys are doing that on Facebook now. A lot of Protestant pastors are doing it on Facebook. So I have one guy in Florida. He has his normal church service on Sunday, but then Monday through Friday at 7 a.m., he has about 300 people that meet with him on Facebook in a Facebook group. And he does a short time of teaching and ministry there. And over the course of the day, maybe 3,000 people will see it played back. So I'm just encouraging pastors, try some new things. If you ever wanted to do things different, this may be the time to try it.
Phil, that's amazing that you're saying that, because that's our model. That's exactly what we're doing. First through third, number one, all of our Bible studies and different meetings, we literally have we have 8 meetings sometime on Zoom with different groups. But our main Bible study online, we have a teaching that Dr. Will does that's like broadcast. And what we're doing is we're keeping it broadcast, because we realize we need to separate the one-on-one from the church from the broadcast, being media people. So now he has his broadcast, which is in-depth teaching, but then we have the one-on-one Zoom Bible study. It may have 8, 10, 12 folks on it to start with. And one-on-one, you can talk to the pastor and he's sharing, and that's growing and personal. That's one-on-one. And so the first 3 Sundays of the month is online. But on the fourth Sunday, it's faith, family, fellowship, and food. Come together. And so we're out in West Putnam County and West Putnam, East Alachua County, and we're coming together on 4 Sundays. And what also it's doing is, I talked to a lady yesterday. She said, I'm going to come and visit y'all. I was Episcopalian and I don't like organized religion. But what I've seen, you guys, you're kind of personal. Can I drop in? See, we take the banner off. Just come. Let's have some food and fellowship and eat and enjoy each other, share a scripture, whatever. And that we're seeing that, and that's where we are. And we're doing that. So I think that's great. Some pastors are like, no, if it works for you, do what you do. But that 3 weeks in and out, it's working for us.
Great. I love to hear that. I just really love to hear that. And I would encourage pastors that with their Sunday service online, even if you get 4 or 5 people tuning in online to watch it, think of this. If those 4 or 5 people showed up at your church on a Sunday, you'd roll out the red carpet.
Exactly.
You'd welcome them. You'd make them feel comfortable, part of the family. Why shouldn't we do that to people who choose to tune in online? Treat them like a real congregation. Reach out to them, look at the camera, talk to them. I'm telling you, if we could do that, I think you would build the church both ways, both in person and online, in a very powerful way.
Phil, let's look at, because there is a generational span, because I'm very much into generations, what time you were born. Are you Gen Xer, Silver, Baby Boomer, whatever, Gen Z, then Gen A, my Lord. But I'm also looking at the fact of much in generations and legacy. How would a pastor, or what would you say for a pastor? Because especially, I know with us in the African American church, through COVID, oh God, people we're praying, believing God, and we're like, oh, when we come back to church, it's going to be like Charlton Heston, at the Red Sea. We're going to open the doors of the church, and there are going to be lines of people with babies and kids and coming. The doors open and they ain't coming.
Yeah.
They're not coming. So one of the things, would you say to a pastor that literally is trying to reevaluate his church or her church and see where they are, what they're doing, how they're reaching, and stopping and taking a look at where they are.
You know, it's a great question. And I answer that by saying so often I think we get confused with the Great Commission. You know, Jesus told us at the end of the Gospels to go, into all the world, preach the gospel to every creature. Well, you know what? If we're going to try to reach everybody, we're doing a pretty terrible job because we're not doing it. In fact, Jesus went into towns. Remember, Jesus went into towns where people didn't respond to him, and he moved
Exactly.
on. He told the disciples, when you go in and they don't treat you right and they don't listen to your message, shake the dust off your feet and move
Keep
on.
on going.
So here's
Yes,
the thing. If Jesus can't reach everybody, we can't reach everybody. So what I
exactly.
encourage pastors to do, based on the pastor, his message, his calling, the key people in the church, your community where you're located, who are the low-hanging fruit? Who are the people in your community that are most likely to respond to your message, and go after them with everything you've got? Aim all your guns in that direction. I just believe that if every church in America did that, we would reach the world, because every church is a little different. Every pastor is a little different, and they're reaching different kinds of people. Maybe your church is great at reaching older folks. You know what? Don't be embarrassed by that. Go for it. Older folks need the gospel, and they've got the money, by the way. Maybe your church is better at reaching younger folks. If that's the case, go for it. Stop trying to be all things to all people and doing everything you possibly can, and start focusing on the audience, the congregation, the community that you think would best respond to your message. And if you really spend time and energy thinking about that, I think you'll get just a brand new vision for your ministry and what's possible out there. So just remember that. And by the way, along that line, let me say this about older folks, if I can, Dr. Brenda.
Sure, go ahead.
So often pastors think, if I try to be new, if I try to be creative, if I try to be innovative, I'm going to turn off the old folks. Well, let me tell you something. The oldest people in your congregation are baby boomers. That means they're the rock and roll generation. The oldest people in your congregation grew up listening to Hendrix. They grew up listening to the Platters. Your new logo is not going to freak them out. And trust me, they're rock and rollers. They're blues people. They get it. So I just would think, pull off the restraints. Let's get that logo updated. Let's make the congregation, the sanctuary, up to speed, get it up to speed, make the changes you want to make. Don't worry about turning off the old folks, because chances are the old folks are cooler than the young people in many ways. And
Exactly.
we think that old folks are like our great grandma, and they're anything that gets them excited, they're going to walk away from. But the truth is, the older folks today grew up with rock and roll. They grew up with all kind of cool stuff. So your new logo, the new paint job in your sanctuary, whatever you want to do, is not going to freak them out. So be bold. This is the time to be creative. Try new things in media. And we're also recognizing, by the way, I'll say this and I'll shut up,
No.
that when it comes to online social media and online videos, the 55 and older crowd watches just as many online videos as the 20-something crowd. So we're seeing older people embrace the online world faster than ever. So I'm just saying, certainly there'll be some people in your congregation that aren't online or don't care about it, but I'm going to tell you, most of the older people in your congregation, they've got their phones, they got their email addresses, they're texting people, they're checking out social media. So this is the time to step out and be bold.
I'm sorry. I didn't leave the spirit, and I didn't go to the flesh, but I just remembered for a minute when you said Jimi Hendrix, hadn't thought about that, and I'm like, Star Spangled Banner, man, did he not do
Yes.
that?
Yeah, I watched a documentary film on him last night, and it was just amazing. So yeah, and remember, that was the 60s. So yeah,
Listen, their Jay-Z and Beyonce was our supremes,
yes.
and the Temptations. So hey, if you're gonna, oh my God, I'm Brenda. I'm a baby
All I
boomer.
can tell you is I don't have Beyonce on my computer. I got the Temptations, I got the Platters, I got Hendrix, I got to get the old guys. No question.
Yeah, listen, this book that you have, and we last year, like I said, COVID, so many things happened. We had to cancel so many things, but we are having this to offer for those pastors that are watching, that will be there. Bishop Robinson, even in our jurisdiction, is encouraging our pastors. We're probably going to have to get more. Listen, this book, what birthed this, Phil? What came about for you to write
I
the book?
I wrote my book, Maximize Your Influence,
Mm-hmm.
during the pandemic because I saw so many pastors and church leaders struggling with this digital thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote it to be a reference book. Every pastor in America needs this on his or her desk because I believe that it's a reference book for how to deal with social media, what should we have on our church website, how to live stream.
Mm-hmm.
And it's written for pastors. It's not
Mm-hmm.
written for the tech people. It's written for
Exactly.
pastors to understand. I even have a chapter on how to preach and teach to a digital generation.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
Mm-hmm.
that there's so much information in there that will help every pastor, executive pastor, Bible teacher in America really understand how to maximize the online world to their advantage to reach more people with the gospel. So it's good for your ministry, it's good for your church, it's good for you personally. It's just everything, really everything, every question you could possibly have about the digital media world, social media world is in there. So that's why I encourage pastors, get your hands on the book because I think it'll really, really help you a lot.
I was watching your interview, and one of the things that you were saying, and I just want to, sort of talk about that for a couple of minutes,
Sure.
is not being perfect and saying it's okay not to be okay, and say, listen, man, I tell you what, we're having to redo a lot of things. We did this, I blew it, even Pastor will, and I think it's a man thing, a guy thing. I say real quick, hey, I messed up, but y'all won't do it. You won't say you're
Yes.
lost. You won't. Okay, that's another story. But
Yes.
yeah, what is say it's okay not to be okay. I made a mistake. What about that
No,
with pastors?
absolutely. In fact, I think we need research and development departments in our churches. We need, staff people that all they do is try and fail. I think they're trying new things to try to, step out there, reach more people. We're going to make mistakes. Embrace it. It's the best thing you could possibly do. It was Thomas Edison that said, I haven't had many successes, but I've had 10,000 failures, and that led to the invention of the light bulb. So I just think that as pastors, we pastors labor under this illusion that the congregation thinks they're perfect. Guess what? The congregation knows. They know you're not perfect. They see your faults. So quit trying to hide it. I think this is the moment when we need to be much more bold, much more upfront and say, you know what? I tried social media and I was terrible at it. It took me a year before I finally figured it out. And now I really enjoy it. Don't be afraid to go online and make mistakes. Don't be afraid to bring in staff people to help you through those mistakes. You know what? Your team will trust you more. People value a leader who's open about his attempts and mistakes and failures. So I think definitely worry less about how you look in front of the congregation and more about what you're learning and how you're growing. That's going to make the difference.
Look at this saying and analyze this for me from a pastor's standpoint. I'm a pastor, and I'm saying, as it relates to social media and being out there, well, I'd rather be a big fish in a small pond than a small fish in a big pond. At least in front of my people, I can look good. They love me. They care about me. But when I get out there, there's so many ways and things that people can see me and criticize. I'm not comfortable. What would you say to that?
Well, we'll get critics, but you know what? This guy named Jesus got critics. And I think if we're going to follow in his footsteps, we should suck it up and be willing to take a few hits. And I think, certainly I'm not an advocate for every pastor. If you feel uncomfortable with it, if you just really feel awkward, don't feel guilty over it. However, I would encourage you that this is the communication tool of the future. And, it would be like today, if you were a pastor who didn't read books, you wouldn't be respected very much. I think in the future, if you're a pastor who doesn't do social media, who doesn't do digital media, I think you're not going to be respected much. I just believe that that's the language of your congregation. And while you may be a big shot to them on Sunday, and that's great, but during the week, they still want to hear from you. They would love to hear an
That's right.
encouraging word from you on social
That's
media.
right.
They'd love for you to reach out and pray for them on social media. So, and let me tell you one big story that I think is important. I also encourage pastors, don't just post things and walk away. respond to the people who respond to you. So, for instance, you write a post on Facebook. If somebody asks a question or somebody responds, I always encourage you to go back and talk to that person online. You engage with that person on Facebook. I had a pastor recently that called me from the East Coast, and he said, Phil, I know you've always talked to me about engaging with people on social media, and I've never done it. But he said, a week ago, a woman asked a question. I posted something theological, something from the Bible on Facebook. And he said, a woman I'd never seen or heard of before asked me a question about it. So I felt led to respond to her. So I responded to her on Facebook. And lo and behold, on Sunday, she showed up at our church. And he said, and lo and behold, at the end of the service, she came forward and accepted Christ. And then he said, lo and behold, on Monday, I got a call that she'd been killed in a car wreck. And he said, I don't want this to sound over spiritual or, corny or anything, but I just think, what if I'd not responded to that woman on social
Wow.
media? She'd have never visited. She'd have never accepted Christ. And so I just think, certainly we can't spend our whole day responding to people on social media. However, I would encourage you to take some time and reach out to the people who have commented on your posts and just thank them or mention something, go deeper. Those little moments with people. I had one pastor that responded to a lady on social media for the first time. Her next post was, oh Lord, my pastor responded to me on social media. This is the greatest church I've ever been to. So you don't know how much people get a kick out of hearing from you online during the week.
Getting ready to wrap up. Final question. How would pastors now, especially those that are on the end stage of baby boomers, that are the senior pastors that have not put things in place, what would you say that they need to begin to do to leave a legacy or to prepare for transition or the changing of the guard? What would you say
Yes.
to that?
I think the single biggest reason churches fail and ministry organizations fail is they wait too long for that succession to take place. Here's the thing you need to know, pastors. People in your congregation want to be comfortable with the next person, the next leader, the next pastor, whoever that is. So I want to pinpoint them early. In fact, years before you're ready to step down, I want to pinpoint that person. I want to pour my life into that person. I want to bring them up on stage and let them preach every once in a while. I want them to have conversations with me on video, on social media. Let people know that you approve of that person, you bless that person, you believe that person is the next one with a vision. Don't be intimidated by, bringing them in too early and thinking they'll kick you out and take over. No. If it's the right person, they'll respect you and honor you. But when that transition happens, it won't be abrupt. It won't be a shock. People will already trust that person. They'll already value that person. And so in those situations, the church grows and grows and grows because there's no hit, there's no weirdness, there's no awkwardness. It just is a smooth transition from one generation to another.
You say so often that you were raised in North Carolina. Your father was
Yes.
a pastor. You did mimeograph. You did all of those things. And now today you are one of the most recognized and appreciated and valued digital and media professional. Cooke Media Group, you've worked with, you named the church, the ministry. You're a professional in the industry. But from one end to the other, has there been a benefit with all the glitz and the glamour? Would you trade anything for your foundation?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, ultimately, the whole reason I do this is to share the gospel with the world. It's interesting that the Apostle Paul built the foundation of the early church on the technology of his day, which was letters. And then this monk that nobody had ever heard of named Martin Luther, he became the most successful author of his generation and literally changed the direction of the church based on his technology, the technology of his day, which was the printing press. So for today, for us not to leverage technology to share the gospel with the
I like
world,
that.
I just think would be a huge mistake. So I just encourage pastors. Certainly it's difficult. We all have to learn. Martin Luther had to figure out the printing press. He had to figure out how it worked and how to get books out there. We have to do the same online. But if you'll take the time, if you'll go to the effort, talk to people, get my book, it'll help you, it'll give you a real jump start. then I think you'll see such a harvest down the road for the gospel. It will be amazing.
Phil, take a moment. I just want you to take a moment and whatever God has laid on your heart directly to share with those pastors out there before you go, because we're dealing with not just denominational, but we're dealing with independent and pastors that are basically online. They don't have a building. They're online and they're out there. But what would you say to give them a word of encouragement, but also advice?
You know, the pandemic has really showed us a new way of doing ministry. It really, really has. I know a pastor in Oklahoma who preaches in front of about 600 people on Sunday, but he has 10,000 people that watch him every week on live stream. And that's continued. That's continued, and he doesn't worry about it. So it's actually, I've never seen one single situation where building your live stream audience actually takes away from your congregation. Obviously, the pandemic made people stay at home, and we're seeing a big shift there. But I would encourage you, it's not either or. Like I said earlier, it's both and. However, people choose to engage with your message and your calling and your ministry, I want it to be an amazing experience. If they come to church, fantastic. I love that. But if they choose to do it online, I love that as well. So that's really the key. And I would say in this digital age, one of the things we need to do is start building a team around us that gets that. And they may be younger people, but build a team that understands websites, understands social media. And if not, you can go outside. That's what we do with our team at Cooke Media Group. We work with churches, helping them figure this stuff out. But find a team around you that believes in online ministry and really wants to take your message to the world, because I just think it all starts with a pastor's message. It all starts with your message and trickles down from there. So when your message is, when you're called by God and you've done your homework, social media, the online world can amplify that beyond the walls of your church to reach potentially thousands, hundreds of thousands, and potentially millions of people.
Thank you so much for being with us. Once again, you're going to get
I'm
the
honored.
information on the screen. You can go to the website for Cooke Media Group, look at all the things, the Influence Lab. Hey, right quick, what's going on with Influence Lab? How you guys doing? What's happening now?
That's, you know what, it's doing great. We started the Influence Lab because we've had so many requests from churches and ministry organizations internationally to come and teach these principles to them. And so during the pandemic, I just got on Zoom and started teaching. I did a seminar with 200 pastors in Russia, a training session, 160 in South America, 200 in Russia, 60 in Mongolia, Portugal, Brazil, 400 in Australia. And out of all that, I wrote the book, and we launched the Influence Lab to help raise money to help pay for communication and media professionals to go overseas. And we've been to India, we've been to Africa numerous times, South America. I was in Brazil just 2 weeks ago, where we translated my Maximize Your Influence book into Russian. A church in
Woo!
Russia is spearheaded publishing it in Russian, and their goal is to release it to 17,000 evangelical pastors throughout Russia, which right now, during this incredibly difficult time in Russia,
Wow.
pastors
Wow.
need to get their message out there. And so it's helping them. They're doing training sessions all over Russia using the Russian version of the book. And that all came about because people helped donate to the Influence Lab and helped us do that work. So the goal of the Influence Lab is really to help take these principles of media and communication to churches all over the world and help them be just as effective online.
I wanted to throw that in so if those that didn't take the time to go to the website to know that it's not just when I said earlier about not just being a media and ministry professional, but try to be a media ministry person. And one thing about Phil Cooke is, and his wife, I mean, beautiful wife, and that group, they have a heart for ministry and a heart for people. They've left an imprint. They're leaving an imprint and left an imprint with pastors all around the world. But he's definitely left an imprint, he and his wonderful wife, with Dr. Will and I. And we are so glad and proud to be a part of Cooke Media and the supporting of. I met Phil several years ago at the NRB, just
Yeah.
doing an interview. at the NRB. And
True.
I was just, that was one of the best interviews I did that whole
It was
time.
fun.
And I'd come back to the NRB looking forward to every year. Okay, let's go say, hey, I'm going to
Yes,
interview Phil Cooke. I'm going to,
that's
and
fun.
it grew from there. And we thank God for it. Thank you, Phil, so much for being
Thank
a
you.
part
I'm
with us
honored to be a
on
part of it.
today.
Love you.
And
All
thank
right.
you for taking the time to be with you. God bless you now.
Thank you.